Whether it's Little League or the big leagues, sports photography is one of the most popular uses of DSLR cameras like these. The great news about sports photography is that anyone can do it with almost any combination of camera and lens. That's the downside too, though. You need to know how to get the most out of the camera and lens combination that you have. Let's get one thing out of the way. You don't need a $6,000 camera and $4,000 lens to take sports photos. Some of the more expensive cameras do have abilities that photographers can use on the sidelines of professional sports games, like higher frames per second and more buttons for quick adaptations when the action is fast moving. You pros know who you are, and you have the gear to match the level of play that you photograph. This video is about the rest of us. Maybe you have a first-time opportunity to shoot sports on the grand stage, or maybe your son or daughter is playing soccer or t-ball for the first time, and you want cool shots to capture the memories with. Whether it's a televised game or a toddler league, let's talk about the keys to coming home with great shots. Element number one, and I can't say this enough, is positioning. A great sports camera and lens in the wrong position is the wrong solution. What this also means is that you need to be prepared to move around. If you're up in the bleachers or shooting through a fence, you won't get the shots that you will from field level, anticipating the action and being in the right spot. Know the sport you're shooting and anticipate where the action may head. You won't be in the right position all the time, but when you see where things are headed and you're already there, you'll feel like a master. Element number two is shutter speed. Unless you want some cool blurring effects, you want a shutter speed to match the sport you're shooting. Soccer, especially with younger kids, tends to be fast-moving, sometimes even faster paced than the grown-ups. Those little guys are chasing the ball and going everywhere, and they bring priceless facial expressions while they're doing it. I enjoy shooting sports with my camera in shutter priority. I like at least a shutter speed of 1/500th to freeze motion. On a nice bright day, I like to crank it up even higher, as long as I'm not having to increase the ISO too dramatically. If you're indoors, you may need those wide apertures and a higher ISO setting to get close to 1/500th. Lighting in gymnasiums varies widely, and this is where certain lenses can help, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Element number three is depth of field and focusing. The ability to separate the subject from the background is what helps your DSLR stand apart from compact cameras. I like shooting sports at f4 with either a prime or a zoom that can hold f4 throughout the zoom range. This helps me assure that I have the entire athlete in focus while blurring distracting background details. For focus, my Nikon's and Canon camera here offer continuous servo autofocus, each with some level of subject tracking. The tracking can help a lot while still giving you control over exactly what you are focusing on. I never use auto area autofocus for sports though. For example, if I am photographing a base runner running into a close play at first base, well, there's also the first baseman in the shot, the pitcher, and maybe the shortstop off in the distance. With auto area, who knows which of those things the camera will focus on. If my main subject is the base runner, I want focus locked on them while I'm panning the camera through the base path. In fact, this is one of those times where you can slow the shutter speed down a bit and maybe get some cool motion blur on the arms and legs of the runner while they're trying to leg out their single. Element number four is fun. It's easy to get wrapped up in the photography of the game, and if that's your job, that's where you want it to be. But if this is Recreation League and you're out there for your kid, don't forget to enjoy the moment. Get some shots, but also take some time to appreciate the joy of the activity and voice your encouragement too. Make friends with other parents, share some images, and you may find yourself handing out business cards too. People can get nervous about finding the right photographer, and if you're showing them great sports work, then they have a pretty good idea that you are equally capable with portraits and events. Now, number five is a touchy subject, frames per second. There are many schools of thought on this. Some people say that if you anticipate the action, a single shot is all it takes. Well, if all of us could anticipate the action, there would be no surprises, and sports are full of surprises. Frames per second can't hurt, but it's not a guarantee that you're going to get great shots. High frames per second stresses technique. If you don't have the other elements nailed down, like shutter speed and focus, you'll just end up with a lot of crappy shots. Number six, let's talk about lenses. Telephoto lenses will help you get close to the action. Wide aperture lenses will help you get shots in low light and isolate the subject more. Telephoto wide aperture zoom lenses are expensive. For outdoor sports, that wide aperture is a bit less important. Indoors, depending upon the lighting in that facility, can be a whole different story. Prime lenses are less expensive, and if you're willing to move around a bit and the particular sport allows for it, primes can win the day. Maybe the 85mm if you're shooting at a basketball court, and a 35mm or 50mm depending upon your positioning and style. These primes are easy to come by. My favorite sports lens is the 70-200 f2.8. It's at home on cropped sensor and full frame cameras, has a wide f2.8 constant aperture, and the flexibility to go from mild telephoto at 70mm to a very usable 200mm at the long end. It can definitely win the day indoors and out, and it's a durable setup. From the on-site marketing side, it definitely is an attention getter, so have those business cards ready. There are various versions of this lens for Nikon and Canon, and some third-party versions as well. It's an investment, no doubt, but it serves a variety of sporting purposes quite well. So that was 6 ways to improve your sports photography. You may have noticed that I talked about using camera settings and lens choice, but I also talked about technique. You can have the biggest and most expensive equipment and still end up with crappy sports photos if you don't know how to use them or don't use creativity in your technique. It all works together, along with practice, to get great sports shots.